Well, welcome back. This is a very difficult hour to teach because we've all been off to lunch and we did not get an opportunity of taking a siesta. So try and bear with me, try and stay awake. We're going to conclude the lesson that we were studying when we ended this morning. And let me just have a word of prayer, and then we'll have a short review, and we'll finish the chapter that we were studying. Father in heaven, thank you for the good food we've been able to enjoy. We ask now that you will be present with us, keep us awake, keep us alert, for we're studying very important things. Give us understanding, and give me the ability to speak so that I can be understood. We thank you for hearing us, for we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let's just do a little review here. Which chapters did we study this morning? Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and when we ended, it was Revelation chapter 12, right? So we studied 3 chapters. What is in the background of Revelation 12? Genesis 3:15, and what other prophecy? Daniel 7. Because Daniel 7 speaks of time, times the dividing of time. Revelation 12 also. Daniel chapter 7 has a dragon beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. Revelation 12 has the same beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. In Daniel chapter 7, you have persecution of the saints. In Revelation 12, you have persecution of the woman. So you know that the background of Revelation chapter 12 is found in Daniel 7 and in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15. Is that clear? Yes. Now, we hadn't finished our study of Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15 as it relates to Revelation chapter 12. So let me just review a little bit about the persecution of Satan, or the dragon, the serpent, against God's people. Who is the prime enemy in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 15? The enemy of the serpent. Is it primarily the woman? Is it the remnant of the woman's seed? No. Who is the enmity really against? The serpent against the woman's seed. And who is that seed? Jesus. So when the child survives and is caught up to God and to his throne, what's the next stage of the controversy? Who does the serpent go after? The serpent goes after the woman, second best. He lost the child, and so now he goes after the woman. And when the earth helps the woman, this beast rises from the earth, you know, the nation that rises in the territory that helped the woman. The dragon is what? He's enraged because he doesn't like the fact that the earth helped the woman. And so this nation that has 2 principles, the 2 horns, religious and civil liberty, is going to persecute, once again, is going to join forces with the papacy to persecute once again. So how many periods of persecution are we talking about? We're talking about 2 periods. The 1260 years, well, if you include the child, but I'm talking against the church. You have the period of the 1260 years, time times the dividing of time. Then the earth helps the woman. Then a nation rises from the earth with 2 principles, but it ends up speaking like a what? Speaking like a dragon, and it persecutes God's people once more. So there's 2 periods of persecution with a period of inactivity in between. We are now in that interim period. So the feet of the image don't give you the full story. It gives you the impression, the feet of the image give you the impression that the 10 nations of Western Europe are the last kingdom before Jesus comes. But what we don't realize is that those 10 kingdoms that eventually the papacy united church and state, and then that's followed by a period of inactivity, once again, the papacy is going to rise to persecute as it did in the past. So let's go where we left off last time, and that was on page 912 of our study notes. And this is a very important point. Do you think that the 7 heads of the dragon beast in Revelation 17 are the same 7 heads that you find in Revelation chapter 12 and Daniel chapter 7? Is there any reason for not believing that? Are they the same heads? Yes. How many heads are functioning at a given time? Only one. Now, if you look at the picture, it says there's a dragon beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. And so you believe that since the beginning, all 7 were ruling, and you had 10 horns. But what's happening, it's giving you the composite picture. Are you with me? The full picture. And then later on, it amplifies and it explains that first of all, you have the dragon beast by itself, then it sprouted 10 horns, then it sprouted a little horn, and now that we're going to study Revelation chapter 13, then the little horn receives a deadly wound. For a while, it's inactive. Then the United States helps the deadly wound to heal, and the papacy will do what it did in the past. Are you with me or not? So Revelation 13 is going to expand greatly upon Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and Revelation chapter 12. Now, notice what J.N. Andrews wrote. And before we read that statement, let's read Revelation 12, verse 15. So the serpent is also called what? The dragon. Okay, so this is the same dragon. The serpent spewed water out of his mouth. How many heads does the dragon beast have? How many heads? 7. So how many mouths must it have? 7. But how many mouths are spewing waters? 1. That's an important detail. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. And how long does this serpent or this dragon spew water out of his mouth? Times, and the dividing of time. Is that the same period we saw in Daniel 7? Yes. Is this an expansion of Daniel 7? Yes. This is a principle that I call the layered approach to the study of Bible prophecy. You know, we study these prophecies independently one from another. I've heard sermons on Revelation 12, I've heard sermons on Daniel 2, on Daniel 7, on Revelation 13, but we usually compartmentalize them. And we don't see this principle of expansion at each stage. Now, notice what J.N. Andrews wrote. He had this clear in his mind. The 7 heads are 7 forms of civil power, which successively bear rule. These 7 heads belong alike to the dragon of Revelation 12, the beast of chapter 13, and that of Revelation chapter 17. This shows conclusively that the dragon and these 2 beasts are symbols of the same power under different heads. Are you understanding what he's writing? For there are not 3 sets of 7 heads, but it is evident that the heads are successive forms of its power, one of them bearing rule at a time, and then giving place to another. The proper period of each seems to be this: the dragon before the 1260 years, the beast of chapter 13 during that period, and the beast of chapter 17 since the deadly wound and captivity at the close of that period. And I would add, not only after the period of the captivity of the papacy and the deadly wound, but all the way till the end. Now, we shall soon see that the sea beast of Revelation 13, 1 through 10, received a mortal wound. And only one of the heads received the mortal wound. So which must be the head that received the mortal wound? It must be the head that was spewing water out of its mouth. Are you with me or not? It must be. It's spewing water out. The earth helps the woman, swallows up the waters, and then we are told that this power receives a deadly wound. What do the waters represent that serpent or the dragon spews out of his mouth for time, times, and dividing of time? We don't have to guess. Revelation 17, verse 15 says, "Then he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues." And then you have stage number 5 at the top of page 913. When the serpent or the dragon is spewing water out of one of his mouths, something comes to the rescue. Not someone, something. What comes to the rescue? The earth. A territory, not a nation. Important. But the earth helped the woman. And the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. Now, the territory would later become a nation. Because in chapter 13, you're going to find that it says that there's a beast, and a beast represents a nation, that rises from the earth, which is mentioned in the previous chapter. Now, let's notice why the pilgrims fled to the United States. Why did the pilgrims flee to the United States? Because they were persecuted in Europe. Is that where the dragon was spewing water out of his mouth? In Europe? For time, times, and the dividing of time? Absolutely. So now there's a place, the earth, that provides refuge. Notice this statement from Great Controversy 292. It was the desire for liberty of conscience that inspired the pilgrims to brave the perils of the long journey across the sea, to endure the hardships and dangers of the wilderness, and with God's blessing to lay, notice that at this time it hadn't been laid yet. There was no United States of America during the colonial period. They were colonies of Great Britain. So Ellen White is correct when she says, and with God's blessing to lay, future, on the shores of America, the foundation of a mighty nation. Now, you know these quotations are in the writings of Ellen White on how historians describe the rise of the United States of America. On Great Controversy, page 440, she wrote, a prominent writer describing the rise of the United States speaks of the mystery of her coming forth from vacancy, where there's no waters, in other words, and says, like a silent seed, we grew into an empire. During the colonial period, a seed, but it later grew into an empire. A nation rises from the earth, in other words. A European journal in 1850 spoke of the United States as a wonderful empire, which was what? Not yet. It wasn't yet. It was emerging. And amid what? The silence of the earth, daily adding to its power and pride. Now, every verse in Revelation 12, 13 to 17 uses the Greek conjunction kai. Whenever you find the word and, you're going to know that it's the word kai, but it's translated differently. Usually it means and, it's a connecting word, a conjunction, but sometimes it's translated differently, and I believe appropriately. So let's read the New King James Version, Revelation 12, verses 13 through 17. Now, that's the word kai. Now, when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. So why does he persecute the woman? If you notice the previous verses, it's because when Jesus died on the cross, he was cast out of heaven. He was cast out as the ruler of this world. So when it says, now, when the dragon saw he had been cast to the earth, he goes after whom? He goes after the woman, because he doesn't have access to the child anymore. So it says he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. But, that's the word kai as well. I believe it's appropriately translated. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle that she might fly into the wilderness to her place where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent. So, that's the word kai as well. So the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. But, that's the word kai as well. But the earth helped the woman Is the word but appropriate there? Of course. He was spewing water out of his mouth, but now the earth comes to the rescue of the woman. So the word kai is very appropriately translated but. So, verse 16, but the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. And, this is the word kai as well, and the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with I don't like the rest of her offspring, because it gives the impression that it's her offspring. The rest of her offspring, this is the New King James, the remnant of her seed is better, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. I like the contemporary English version, how it connects verse 17. Notice how it reads. So, when the dragon, this is beginning with the previous verse 16. So, when the dragon saw he was cast out, he persecuted the woman. But, Kai, God gave the woman the wings of an eagle to escape to the wilderness. Then the dragon spewed water of his mouth. But the earth helped the woman. And now comes the conclusion. This made, that's the word Kai. This made the dragon enraged with the woman. Why was the dragon enraged with the woman? Because the earth helped the woman. Do you think the devil loves this country? He hates this country. Why does he hate the United States of America? Because the United States of America guarantees full freedom, civil and religious freedom. And the devil hates that because the devil loves coercion. He loves force. He doesn't love the idea that everyone should be able to worship God according to the dictates of their own conscience. Now, notice stage 6. There's a stage 6. The earth helps the woman. And what happens as a result of the earth helping the woman? Oh, now comes the conclusion. And, which the contemporary English version says, this made, and the dragon was wroth with the woman. This is the King James Version. And went to make war with the remnant of her seed. What characteristics do they have? Who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. What does the dragon hate? The commandments and the testimony of Jesus. Remember that. Because the earth helped the woman, the dragon will launch a what? A second stage of persecution. Which was the first period of persecution? Time times the dividing of time. The earth helps. The nation rises in that territory. There's a period of civil and religious liberty. And then the result is that the dragon is enraged. 2 periods of the rage of the dragon. 2 periods of persecution. The sequence is as follows. During the first stage, the dragon spewed water out of his mouth for times, and half a time. Then, after the earth helped the woman, that's Revelation 12:16, the dragon launched a second period of persecution. Chapter 12 had already identified the woman's seed as Christ. So the remnant of her seed must be the remnant of Jesus. Now, this is an important point. Although the dragon hates all of God's commandments, he despises one of them in particular. What did the little horn think that it could do? Not abolish, change. That's a key word. Not abolish, change in some way the law of God. So although the dragon hates all of God's commandments, he despises one of them in particular. However, in his rage, the dragon did not intend to abolish this commandment, but rather to what? To change it. Thus, we need to discover which commandment the dragon intended to change during the 1260 years. Are you with me? Do you think that in the expansion you're going to know which commandment it is? You think that there's a further expansion that tells us which commandment? We usually read Daniel 7:25. He thought he could change times and law, but we don't connect it directly with Revelation chapter 13 and Revelation chapter 17. According to the lexicons, the Aramaic, because Daniel chapter 7 is in Aramaic, the Aramaic word change, sebar, means the intention to change something from the way it was before. So we have to look for a change in the law in the way that it was before. Now, who claims to have changed one of God's commandments during the times, and half a time? In your study notes, you have close to 11 pages regarding the change of the Sabbath. And the word change is used repeatedly by Roman Catholic writers. The word alter also is used several times. Let me give you just one quotation. This is John O'Brien, who for many years was a theology professor at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, right near Andrews University, the author of 40 books, very renowned during the time of his tenure. I want you to notice what he wrote. The church received the authority to make such a change from her founder, Jesus Christ. He solemnly conferred upon his church, which he didn't, by the way, the power to legislate, govern, and administer the power of the keys. It is to be noted that the church did not change the divine law, obliging men to worship, but merely changed what? Do you see the number of times that we have the word changed here? Changed the day in which such public worship was to be offered. Thus, the law involved was merely a ceremonial law. In other words, the Sabbath was a ceremonial law. The papacy didn't really change the law of God. It just changed the day in which you worship. Now notice, but since Saturday, not Sunday, is specified in the Bible, isn't it curious that non-Catholics, he's referring to Protestants, who profess to take their religion directly from the Bible and not from the church, observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Yes, of course it is inconsistent. But this change was made about 15 centuries before Protestantism was born. And by that time, the custom was universally observed, the custom of keeping Sunday. They, that is Protestants, have continued the custom even though it rests upon the authority of the Catholic Church. Clear? And not upon an explicit text of the Bible. And now comes a really critical point, important point. Listen carefully, that observance remains as a reminder of the Mother Church. Who's being reminded of the Mother Church? Protestants of the Mother Church, from which the non-Catholic sects broke away. Like a boy running away from home, but still carrying in his pocket a picture of his mother or a lock of her hair. Do you know the problem with Protestants? They never totally broke away from the mother, and that's the reason they will return to mother. They teach that the dead are not dead, that hell burns forever, that if you were wicked, you burn in hell from the moment of your death, and that Sunday is the day of worship. Protestants have continued several of the apostate doctrines of the Roman Catholic Church, and therefore, that will be the link that will bring them back to mother, like a child running away from home, but carrying a lock of mother's hair, the reminder. Isn't this a remarkable statement? You find 11 pages of them from many different scholars that use the word changed, altered, etc. Now, here's an important point. During the 1260 years, the little horn claimed to have changed the fourth commandment from Sabbath to Sunday. When its deadly wound is healed, it will impose that change by force. What is it going to impose? The mark of the beast. And what is the mark of the beast? The observance of Sunday. What it changed during the 1260 years, it is going to impose by force when it heals from its wound. That's why you have to go to Revelation chapter 13, which we're going to go to in a moment for a further expansion. So let's summarize. This is page 916. Let's summarize the content of Revelation chapter 12. The woman represents the Old Testament period, the period of the lion, the bear, and the leopard. The dragon is the first stage of Rome. The 10 horns, the second stage of Rome, divided Rome. The 1260 years, the third stage of Rome. Then there's a period of what? Of respite. The earth is helping the woman. The nation that rose from the earth with the two principles, civil and religious liberty, is helping the woman. But then you have a fourth stage of Rome when the wound is healed and persecution comes again. Did Daniel 7 mention a fourth stage of Rome? Did you find anything in Daniel 7 that the little horn, after the 1260 years, was going to have a period of inactivity, and then its wound was going to be healed, and it was going to persecute again? Is that in Daniel 7? No. Is it in Daniel 2? No. Is it in Revelation 12? It is in Revelation 12. Now, when Revelation chapter 12 ends, we still have questions. By the way, the questions are on page 916. Why will the dragon be furious with the woman a second time? Where in the book of Revelation do we find a further description of the dragon's wrath of Revelation 12:17? Because 12:17 says the dragon was enraged with the woman, made the war with her. The ones who keep the commandments of God have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So where in Revelation do we find an expansion of that, of the reason for the dragon's anger? Next question, in what manner will the dragon manifest his wrath against the woman in verse 17? Will he do it in person, or will he do it by using another beast, his seed, as his deputy? Which of the 10 commandments does the dragon particularly despise? It's an important question. What is the testimony of Jesus? And why will the dragon hate those who possess it? What methods will the dragon employ to attack the testimony of Jesus? What strategy is he going to use to attack the testimony of Jesus, which we know to be the spirit of prophecy, manifested in the person of Ellen G. White? And who is the remnant of the woman's seed? Well, let's deal first of all with that last question. Who is the remnant of her seed? You know, usually we read Revelation 12:17 and we say, they goes to make war with the remnant of the woman. He doesn't go to make war against the remnant of the woman. He goes to make war with the remnant of the woman's seed. So the question is, who is the seed? Notice Galatians chapter 3 and verse 16 and verse 29. Galatians 3, 16 and 29. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. The Greek word sperma, the same word. He does not say unto seeds as of many, but as of one. How many seeds of Abraham? One. And to your seed, who is what? Who is Christ. So who is the solitary seed? The only seed? Jesus Christ. So are we not seed? Well, notice what we find here in verse 29. And if you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. So what is the remnant of her seed? It's the remnant of Jesus. It's the seed's seed. I don't know if you're following me or not. Too much lunch. The devil goes against the seed of the seed. Those who follow Jesus. The remnant of Jesus, in other words. And here's the interesting point. Let me give you an illustration. I worked for about an hour in our garden this morning, getting it ready to plant. We plant tomatoes every year. Where does the tomato plant come from? From one seed. Right? You can plant several seeds, you have several plants, but a tomato plant comes from one seed, right? So the tomato plant grows. How many tomatoes can be on that plant? Let's say 100 tomatoes on that plant. What are those tomatoes? The seed's seed. Yes or no? Yes. And how many seeds can a tomato have? A multitude which no one can number, right? And so Christ is a solitary seed, but those who receive Christ, they become the seed. That is the final focus of Satan, is the remnant of the woman's seed, what is left of the woman's seed on planet Earth. Now let's go to Revelation 13. This is the most exciting part. Revelation chapter 13. Further expansion. Let's read Revelation 13, 1 and 2. Immediately you're going to see the connection with Daniel 7. Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. I wish we had time to study every detail here, but we just don't have the time. I want you to see the big picture, and then you can go and study for yourself. Now, it says, now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion, and the dragon. What chapter does this link with? Daniel 7. Is this a further expansion of Daniel 7? Yes or no? It's as subtle as a freight train. But there's a difference. Whereas in Daniel chapter 7, you have lion, bear, leopard, dragon beast, 10 horns. Here you have the dragon beast with 10 horns, leopard, bear, and lion in reverse order. Why? Because Daniel is living in the times of the kingdom of Babylon, of the lion, and he's looking forwards. Whereas John is living in the period of the dragon, and he's looking backwards. This shows that historicism is the method that needs to be used in the study of Bible prophecy. So John is looking backwards. Now, the lion, the bear, and the leopard are Old Testament powers. Let's go to the New Testament powers. The dragon, there's a dragon, Revelation 13, represents the first stage of what? Of Rome. The dragon has 10 horns. That's the second stage of Rome. Rome divided. Then you have the beast. That's papal Rome that ruled for 42 months, which is the same thing as time times the dividing of time. It's the same as 42 months and 1,260 days. Now, for 42 months, this is the third stage of Rome, the beast from the sea persecuted the saints, spoke blasphemies against God, attacked the heavenly sanctuary. Yeah, Revelation 13, verse 7 says that he attacked the sanctuary. We'll study that when we get to Daniel chapter 8. And it fared well. It says things went well for him during the 42 months. Revelation 13, however, adds a fourth stage to this fourth beast. A fourth stage to Rome. Is it clear the stages of Rome? First, that's Rome by itself. Second, it's Rome with the 10 horns. Third, Rome with the little horn. And fourth, the United States benefiting Rome. And that's where we're going to go now in the next few moments. When the 42 months concluded, we're now on page 918. When the 42 months concluded, the beast received what? A deadly wound on all of its heads. How many? One of its heads. So how many heads are functioning at a time? Only one. So it says, and I saw one of his heads. Would that be the same head that was spewing water out? Yes. Of course, absolutely. As if it had been what? Mortally wounded. Who gave the beast its mortal wound? Notice this statement from Malachi Martin. Have you ever heard of Malachi Martin? Yes. Jesuit priest. Wrote the famous book, The Keys of This Blood. He wrote this following statement, and he did not realize that he was commenting on the deadly wound that the papacy received, because he didn't understand Revelation 13. Notice the statement. He's writing in 1986, remember. For 1,500 years and more, Rome, he means papal Rome, Rome had kept as strong a hand as possible in each local community around the wide world. So what had Rome done for 1,500 years and more? Had kept a strong hand as possible in each local community around the wide world. And then he says this, by and large, and admitting some exceptions, that, what does he mean by that? That Rome had kept as strong a hand as possible in each local community around the wide world. So he says, by and large, and admitting some exceptions, that had been the Roman view, to keep a strong hand, until 200 years of inactivity had been imposed upon the papacy by the major secular powers of the world. What's the significance of that statement? If you go back from 1986, 200 years, you end up at the period of the French Revolution. He's saying that for 200 years, the French Revolution had caused the papacy to be inactive. Is that the period when the earth is helping the woman? When the beast has two horns like a lamb, civil and religious liberty? Absolutely. Now, there are three conclusions from this statement. The papacy kept as strong a hand as possible in each local community around the wide world for more than 1,500 years. Would that fit with times, and the dividing of time? Absolutely. But for the last 200 years, from 1986 when he's writing, the papacy has been unable to use the power of the state to persecute. Going back from 1986, 200 years, takes us to the French Revolution. This fits perfectly with Ellen White's statement that if the secular powers remove the restraint from the papacy will regain its power. What is the deadly wound? You know, people talk about the Roman Catholic Church as if it was the papacy. The Roman Catholic Church is not the papacy. The church did not receive a deadly wound. Because after the Pope was taken captive, parents still took their children to be baptized. There was still Mass. They could still go to the confessional. Papacy means a system that joins church and state. But what happened in 1798? The state portion was removed from the papacy. And it was no longer a church state. It was merely a what? It was merely a church. So we need to understand that the papacy is not the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is the religious side of the papacy, but the papacy is a union of church and state. And that's why Ellen White, in Great Controversy 564, wrote, "Let the restraints now imposed by secular governments." What restrains the papacy today? What keeps the deadly wound in place? The restraints of what? Of the secular governments. What happens if the secular governments give, once again, support to the papacy? The deadly wound is healed. So let the restraints now imposed by secular governments be removed and Rome be reinstated. There's a fourth stage of Rome. In her former power, and there would speedily be a revival of her tyranny and persecution. Is this clear? Praise the Lord. Now, what's going to happen with the deadly wound? It's going to heal. Notice Revelation chapter 13 and verse 3. Revelation chapter 13 and verse 3. And his deadly wound was healed. And now notice, it's not only Europe. Hello. The three evil spirits like frogs go to the kings of the earth and the whole world. The 10 horns now become global. In the final fulfillment, because the harlot sits on nations, multitudes, tongues, and peoples. What was local in Europe now becomes global in the end time. And so it says his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. In the fourth stage, the deadly wound is healed, and the papacy rises to power once more. to persecute the saints as it did in the past. The same dragon who persecuted the woman during times, and the dividing of time will once more manifest his wrath. Revelation 12:17 describes the healing of the wound, doesn't it? The dragon was enraged with the woman. That's the second stage of persecution. But Revelation 12:17 doesn't tell us how the wound would be healed or by whom. It simply says the dragon was enraged. But it doesn't say how the wound is healed and who's going to heal the wound. The questions that remained unanswered in Revelation 12:17 will be answered in Revelation 13, verses 11 to 18. How and by whom will the wound be healed? The answer is stunning. Another beast will rise from the territory that helped the woman, and this beast will heal the wound. In other words, it will be the dragon's seed. Apostate Protestantism is the devil's seed. This beast will impose what? The change in the law. That's the mark of the beast. On pain of death. In contrast, the faithful who keep the commandments of God will receive what? The seal of God, which is the Sabbath. Now we know which commandments he wanted to change. By going to Revelation 13, it's an issue over the seal of God and what? And the mark of the beast. Now we know which commandment it is. At its origins, the earth beast was benign. It defended two fundamental God-given principles, civil and religious liberty, by separating church and state. But the dragon will manifest his wrath by using the earth beast as a puppet, as the dragon used the papacy during the 1260 years. Did you notice that in Revelation 12 it says that the dragon was the one that persecuted the woman? How did the dragon persecute the woman? By using the papacy. See? The papacy is his seed. And the same thing is going to happen at the end. Is the dragon going to be enraged against the woman? How is he going to manifest that rage? By using the United States. Because he is in stealth mode until after the millennium. And I hope some of you read the article that I wrote about history's hidden conspiracies. Everything the devil does now, he has deceived the political rulers of the world. They don't know that they are his instruments. Do you know when they're going to find out? After the millennium. Because the devil will then be visible. For the first time, they will see who was orchestrating their decisions. And Ellen White states that when that panoramic view appears above the city, she says that the nations, the kings will be enraged, no longer against the remnant of her seed. They will be enraged against Satan. They will not attack the city. They're going to attack Satan. Read it in Ezekiel chapter 28. Now, what about the testimony of Jesus? We're at the foot of page 919. Even further, this beast will attempt to make of none effect the testimony of Jesus. And what is the testimony of Jesus? The true gift of prophecy. The true gift of prophecy. Now notice, besides claiming to change the day of worship in the law from Sabbath to Sunday, it will attempt to change God's prophetic times. Because it says he would think to change times and law. By the way, it's singular in Hebrew, law. He would seek to change, in Aramaic rather, he would seek to change not only the law, but times and law. Now, we're not going to say a lot about this, but I would recommend that you get a book and read it. It's called Futurism's Incredible Journey. What would be the best way to counteract the true gift of prophecy that points out how end-time events are going to take place? What would be the best way that Satan could deceive people to not believe the true scenario of Bible prophecy? The best way would be to establish rival systems of interpretation. To say that the prophecies were all fulfilled in the past, preterism, or that the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation are going to be fulfilled in the future. And that way Satan says, they believe that all these prophecies are history, or they believe that they're going to be fulfilled after the rapture of the church. And meanwhile, in Rome, the papacy that will persecute again rises to world power and world admiration. And the United States is taking steps to return power to the papacy, and no one can see it because they're looking in the wrong place. So how does Satan counteract? By the way, do you know what this beast from the earth is called? He's called, in other places of Revelation, the false prophet. Hello? So it's the true prophet and the true scenario of prophecy, and the false prophet and his scenario of prophecy. If you want to see the whole trajectory of how God's times, which is referring to God's prophetic events, how the papacy, two papal individuals, Alcázar and Rivera, two Jesuits from Spain, are the ones who originally changed historicism to preterism and futurism. And today, what does the Protestant world believe? Liberal Protestants, they say, Little Horn was Antiochus Epiphanes, who lived 165 years before Christ. So these prophecies don't have anything to do with us. These prophecies were fulfilled in the distant past. And the main number of Protestants say, prophecy is going to be fulfilled after the rapture of the church. The Jerusalem temple is going to be rebuilt. The literal Jews are going to be persecuted for 3.5 literal years. And the Antichrist is going to literally sit in a rebuilt Jewish temple. That's what's being taught. Yes or no? You can hear it every Sunday on television. Thank God for the book Great Controversy. Ellen White wrote, letter 281, 1905, the Great Controversy should be very widely circulated. It contains the story of the past, the present, and the future. In its outline of the closing scenes of this earth's history, it bears a powerful testimony in behalf of the truth. I am more anxious to see a wide circulation for this book than for any others I have written. For in the Great Controversy, the last message of warning to the world is given more distinctly than in any of my other books. Are you catching the picture? Does Revelation 13 help us to understand Revelation 12:17? Yeah. The devil's going to raise a false prophet with a false prophetic scenario. And he's going to impose the mark of the beast, which is the change in the Sabbath. If you didn't have Revelation 13, we'd be nebulous about these things. But Revelation 13 tells us how the wound is going to be healed and who is going to heal the wound. You say, well, Pastor Bohr, but the United States, how can that be the fourth stage of Rome? The United States isn't Rome. True. But the United States will be the puppet of Rome. Notice the following details. Do you know that every time that the dragon appears in the book of Revelation, it has a relationship to Rome? Did the dragon try to kill the male child? Did the dragon persecute the woman? Now, who was the dragon that persecuted the woman? The papacy, right? Roman papacy. Who tried to kill the child? The Roman Empire. So if this beast is going to speak like a dragon, it's going to speak like Rome. I don't know if you caught that point. Second, by the way, Ellen White wrote, Great Controversy 581, stealthily and unsuspectedly, the papacy is strengthening her forces, that is, her allies, to further her own ends when the time shall come for her to strike. All that she desires is a vantage ground, and this is already being given her, even in Ellen White's day. We shall soon see, listen carefully now, we shall soon see and shall feel what the purpose of the Roman element is. Do you know what she means by the Roman element? She's talking about the iron of Rome. It's the civil power. Whoever shall believe and obey the word of God will thereby incur reproach and persecution. Listen, folks, this beast from the earth, everything it does to please the first beast. In other words, the dragon that tried to kill the male child transferred its seat and authority to the papacy, and the papacy will transfer its authority to the United States. You say, how do you know that? Everything in Revelation 13, verses 11 to 18 says that that's what's going to happen. It tells us there in verse 12 that the beast from the earth will exercise all the authority of the first beast. It will do everything in the presence of the first beast. It will require all the world to worship the first beast. It will make an image of the first beast. It will make an image in honor of the first beast. And it will impose the mark of the beast. Somehow I think that the beast from the earth is going to exist to please Rome and to return the power to Rome. That's why this is a fourth stage of Rome, because the United States will return the power to Rome. Listen to these two statements from Ellen White. The world is filled with storm and war and variance. Yet under how many heads? Under one head. What is that head? The papal power. The people will unite to oppose God in the person of his witnesses. This union is cemented by the great apostate. So the papacy is the one head. Is the United States the kingdom that gives its authority to the papacy? Notice the following statement. Maranatha 187. What is it that gives its kingdom to this power? What is it that gives its kingdom to the papacy? Protestantism, a power which, while professing to have the temper and spirit of a lamb and to be allied to heaven, speaks with the voice of a dragon. It is moved by a power from beneath. What do you think? Does the book of Revelation, does Daniel, do they use a layered approach? It's like an onion. An onion has different layers, but it's still the same onion. And so it is with Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 12, Revelation 13, and if I had time, I would go into Revelation 17, which fully describes what will happen when the deadly wound is healed. It takes you to the very end. To the time that the harlot is condemned. I will show you the condemnation of the great harlot. And by the way, are the waters going to flow again from the head? You better believe it. Where's the harlot seated? She's seated on the many waters. So are the waters that persecuted before flowing again? Yes, they are. So we cannot study Revelation 17 by itself. We have to connect Revelation 17. It also has a dragon beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. We have to link it with Revelation chapter 13, Revelation chapter 12, and Daniel chapter 7, where the same 7-headed, 10-horned beast appears. We are to see that each layer is an expansion or an amplification of what we find in the previous outlines. And when we study it that way, it becomes amazing what we discover. In Daniel 7, the enemy that persecutes the saints is the little horn. Revelation 13, it's the beast. And Revelation 12, it's the dragon. So, in other words, the little horn and the beast are emissaries of whom? Of the dragon. Because the dragon operates by stealth, invisibly. But after the millennium, the world will see who he really is. And every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of the Father. So let's remain on the straight and narrow, and let's share these ideas with those who are searching for the truth.